Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Encounter. So you can see that it looks a little bit different this week. I'm Emma and I'm your host. So this is our weekly scripture study podcast for the Old Testament for the One Turner Southward. This week I have someone who I've actually never met before being our guest, but they live in America and they are friends with one of my friends, Joe. They do Highland dancing together. So I'll let her introduce herself because I actually do not know how to say her name.
Yeah, my name is Elisheva Thoreen. Elisheva is where Elizabeth comes from. So if you remember John the Baptist's mom, Elizabeth, that actually was her name,
Okay.
was Elisheva. Um, and I'm my fraternal great grandparents were Judeo-Swedes. So that's why I've got this funky name of my last name is mangled Swedish. Um, so, um, So that's and then of course typical Jewish person. I've got three middle names.
Oh,
Um so and every name has a meaning. So like Elisheva means oath of God.
yeah. Love.
So
So you're Jewish, which is so lovely that you've agreed to come on the podcast with me. I really appreciate that, and I want you to know that I'm so respectful of the similarities that we have, but also our differences. What things do you do within your community and your synagogue to serve? Like obviously, like you were telling me that you came from a Christian background, so like I've been a Sunday school teacher, or so. What things do you do?
yeah, so my synagogue, one of the big things in the Jewish community, particularly the more liberal side, but also the Kabbalists, is called Tikkun Olam, which is healing the world. So we have a lot of different things. Everything from we have a full commercial kitchen, so we make 300 plus meals a week for
Oh,
people. And little prepackaged meals. We do everything from helping people who are in the jails and prisons. Um, we've got solar panels on the roof, and we do all of that kind of thing. We do all kinds of different things for the community. Um, and then I'm one of the musicians there at my synagogue. Um, so I will say that's one of the things about the more liberal stream is that we do a lot of music.
yeah.
Our cantor is actually a former professional rock musician.
Oh, wow.
Um, and we've got other musicians who come in, like all the different professional musicians. She knows them all. We have two of the top Jewish songwriters. One's on staff. One comes in several times a year to work with us. Um, like I said, we've got lots of professional musicians, there. Um,
Yeah, no, that
so I mean, I'm one of the musicians there. And so the kiddos get have school, Sunday school, and but we also have services on Friday night. We have Minyan and Torah study on Saturday mornings. Uh,
so you mentioned
so
the Torah. So just for our viewers, the Torah is the first 5 books of Moses. So
Correct.
Genesis,
It's
Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
correct.
And I
And so
actually have a
our
Hebrew Bible.
Yep,
So the
yep.
first five
So
books of
yep, I
Moses.
actually have that one. I have that book.
Yeah,
Um,
Robert Alter, he's
so
great.
so I have so for us, our what you all refer to as the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, is Tanakh, which is that's an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. So Torah is the first 5 books. Um, um, Nevi'im is the prophets, and see, and then the Ketuvim is the writings. That's everything from Chronicles to Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Ruth,
Yeah.
Esther. That's all. So, that's what that is, and so you can see the Hebrew and the English in there, and
Yeah.
it does go right to left. Uh,
Yeah, well, I can't read Hebrew, so thank goodness Robert Alter's book just has English in it for me. But sections that we're studying this week are Exodus 14 to 18, which is parting of the Red Sea and then journeying into the wilderness. Last week we did Exodus 7 to 13, but I did want to back up a little bit because for that episode I actually attended a Seder, a Passover meal. When I booked the ticket, I just assumed that all community Seders were Jewish, so I was actually a little bit disappointed when I found out that it was put on by a Christian pastor. And by that stage, all the tickets to the community Jewish Seders at the synagogues were sold out. So I went to it and it was lovely, but I actually really, next year, I really want to go to a traditional one. So I'm just going to back up a little bit into what we covered last week. And I just really want to, the reason why the podcast is called Encounter is because I love to hear people's stories. So my background is I'm an intensive care nurse, and the greatest part of my job, as well as the greatest part of my service in my church, is to hear people's stories and how their encounters with life, but also with the stories of ancient, help them to draw closer to God. So, just briefly, if you could just let me just talk about the plagues and the Passover and what they mean to you.
Well, it's again, it's like I've got a little bit of a mishmash because I grew up evangelical. I did 12 years of Christian school. And then I was very active in Southern Baptist and Northern Baptist and even charismatic movements and things like that. Um, so a little bit of what that I came into it with was the whole thing about it was kind of like taking the whole Egyptian pantheon and flipping it on its head.
Yeah,
A big part of that. Um, and then listening to people who are scientific, they kind of go, it actually kind of follows about natural things. Silt came down the Nile and killed off animals and different, that kind of spiral. Um, so that's kind of where all of the plagues are. And eventually, Pharaoh decides, okay, it's time for me to finally let them go.
yeah,
Um, there's of course, lots of scholarly debate about, all of this, and I'm like, well, whatever. I don't get that worked up
yeah,
over a lot of that. Some people do. I'm like, whatever. So maybe, but yes, eventually they left, and there is scholarly debate as to exactly what the Exodus and who did what and when and the timing. And I'm not that worked. I don't get worked
yeah,
up over it. Um, so some people are saying the Sea of Reeds. Some people are saying the literal eastern tongue of the Red Sea.
yeah,
Um, so that's kind of where, and then of course when we finally cross the Red Sea, and you've got Miriam's song, which is we sing her song every week during
oh,
service.
okay, yep, lovely.
It's Michamoka is the prayer. And that actually comes directly out of Exodus
Yeah. So
uh
that was Exodus 15.
15. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it starts off with "Who is like you," which is, that's Michamoka. 15:11, 15:2, that's all, um, right there. That's Michamoka.
yeah,
Um, so what our Cedar Ream has, it's got the Hebrew. So it's got the Hebrew, then the transliteration. So like I'm still learning Hebrew because I didn't grow up with it.
yeah.
So it has it written out so you can actually sing it if you don't know the Hebrew.
Oh, that's great.
And then it has a translation as well.
Yeah,
And then they also have philosophical thoughts on the other side. So, we refer to it as the left side of the page. So
yeah.
that's how our prayer book is set up. Um,
And so with Passover, so in Exodus, it's referred to as the Passover because they take the lamb and they paint the blood of the lamb on the doorpost and on the top of the door so that then the death angel passes over and then they're able to then the next morning leave Egypt and escape. But the tradition of remembering it every year with the lamb, the bitter herbs, and the unleavened bread is also in Exodus. And so that's why the Jewish people observe that strictly every year of it as it's a family together. It's that coming together and really having that reverent time and celebration to sit with family. What's your experience with Passover and how has that helped you by remembering, Joseph coming into Egypt, the bondage for 430 years, and then them being released from bondage after the 10 plagues and the Passover? How has that impacted your life and helped you to come to know God better?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the whole thing within Judaism that we read through the Torah every year.
Yes.
So
You
it's
start
broken
that
into
in
little chunks.
October?
Yeah, it's they're called the let's see, they are parshiot is parshat. So it's broken into 54 chunks,
Yeah.
and so which has to account for the fact that we have leap months periodically.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, so that our holidays, because our holidays are all agricultural, most of them are agricultural, so we don't want them to move.
Yeah.
Um, so so we do that, and so we do sermons every week. Devar, I've done a few at my synagogue during the summer. We do during the summer. Our synagogue actually opens it up to the lay people.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Not every synagogue does that, but we do. So I've done the last 2 summers. I've done it. Um, so so we everything that we do is in remembrance. So it's like Shavuot, which is coming up next. Um, that is part of it's like barley harvest. We count from the second night of Pesach to Shavuot. We
When I was studying the Old Testament 4 years ago, when I was teaching it, and I got into looking at the Jewish festivals and the holidays, I actually got very jealous. I was like, I want to do these because they just seem so community encompassing, and we are asked within the scriptures to remember God through the stories. And I feel like because you celebrate them so much, that's where your remembrance of him and being able to see how they, like for example, how the Passover, relates to us today, because I like to what I call liken the scriptures unto ourselves. So we can read the stories of old, but there's always something for us to learn from them. And I think that because you guys study them and read them so much, that you then become to learn and grow and apply them to your lives. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. There's so many different forms of the Haggadah is the storytelling of Passover,
Yeah.
and there are so many versions of it. There's, I've got ones on my computer. Maxwell House put out one way back in the day. That's kind of the classic.
Yep.
Um, and so there are so many different versions of them out there. Some that are, definitely aimed at the kiddos, and some that are aimed at people who are more scholarly. So there's a whole range.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of along the same lines of remembering was even Napoleon made a comment. He was walking by some place and he's like, all these people are in there, like they're mourning and all this stuff. And was talking, and he turns to one of his cohort and he goes, who are they? I go, that's the Jews. They're mourning the loss of Jerusalem and the temple.
Yeah.
And he goes, that was how long ago it was? He goes, yeah, that was, you know, 1900 years ago. And he's like, uh-oh. He goes like, basically it's like, goes, you're not going to be able to beat them because they remember
Yeah.
that. Um,
I love that you guys remember the loss of the temple. Obviously, we have differing beliefs on some things, but then there are other things that we come together on. And in our church, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, in the early history of the church, we were driven out of lands. Like there was actually a law in Missouri that you could actually kill Mormons. Um, and that was an extermination order. So we had temples that were burnt to the ground and temples that were taken over, and that caused our people deep pain. So I can only imagine um, what it would have been like to have, you know, those temples, that temple in Jerusalem taken over, burnt, desecrated, because we do think of them as holy places, and it hurts us that we believe the temple is the house of God. It hurts us that someone could desecrate something so sacred to us.
right, because going back to, obviously the first temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed, in the, from the, um,
From the
the
Yeah,
Syrians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the
yeah,
whole, all of that kind of thing, and then it got rebuilt, and then Herod built a nicer one, and then the Romans destroyed that one, and
now
so
they
as
have the West Wall is still
yeah,
there.
the Western Wall is actually when, Herod did all the massive building, that is actually basically a big retaining wall.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So what you're seeing on the top, which is, Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock, that's, Islamists built that on top of it. That was something that was very common. It was like, the Hagia Sophia in Turkey was originally a Christian church.
yeah,
And so that they took it and turned it into a mosque.
yeah.
And that's why they did that. So, so anyway, but of course, on a lighter note, one of our famous sayings is, "They try to kill us, we won. Let's eat."
Okay,
So it's kind of like so many of our festivals are about food. It's like Rosh Hashanah is about it's apples and honey. Yom Kippur, it's a fast day, but then when you're done, you break the fast. It's a big dinner,
yeah,
big food, lots of food. Hanukkah, everything's about fried food.
yeah.
Shavuot, it's dairy.
And of course, Passover is about food as well,
Yes,
because you have the Passover meal, which is the Seder. Did I say that right? Or is it the Seder?
yeah.
The Seder,
Seder is, again, Hebrew. We've
like
got
tomato, tomato, Seder, Seder.
right. Well, it's kind of like we've got words like if you see a ch in that transliteration I've got, that actually that's not a chud, that's a it's a
Oh,
clear throat clearing sound. So,
like a German
um,
rolling of the tongue.
right, which is why Hanukkah is spelled so many ways
Okay.
because it's the Hebrew word, not let's see, it is Chaf, that first letter is Chaf. So which is a that's got that sound. So
Yeah. And so with Passover, um, the with the Seder, you have food as in Exodus. So it talks about the lamb and the bitter herbs and the unleavened bread, and you actually clear leaven out of the house. And I've learnt that that's where spring cleaning came from. So, because we live in Australia, so it's actually autumn now, whereas
right.
it's spring for you. And so they would actually clean the house, get rid of all the leaven, and then you can't have leaven in the house for 7 days,
8 days.
8 days.
So it's, yes, a very orthodox. The more you follow kashrut, the more important that is. It's, you know, again, I'm Reform, and I refer to myself as kosher light. Um, so I personally will never give up my cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
So, um, just a little bit of levity there. I won't give up my cheeseburgers, and I like eating alligator.
Okay.
that's not kosher either.
But you don't have pork and you don't have bottom feeding animals from the sea?
Correct. And so yeah, so kosher, it's like no crab, no shrimp, no lobster, no alligator, no catfish,
Yeah.
um,
So no shrimp. That means
pork.
Forrest Gump wasn't Jewish.
Yeah, yeah, Bubba Gump. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so again, you've got people who are who are really strict about kosher, about kashrut, and some of us, I had a girlfriend in Richmond, Virginia, who she was raised with one foot in the Hasidic community, one foot in the Reformed community, and she and her dad both were like, we like bacon,
Yeah.
you know, which was funny. I mean, we'd go to a restaurant and she'd be like, "Give me the bacon." Um, and I was one who was stricter about not eating pork than her.
Yeah.
Um, so but yes, and things like the whole thing about anything with leaven. It's a bit of a game for them. It's like not only do they clean, then they will leave like one crumb somewhere, and dad like finds it and sweeps it up with a feather or something and throws it outside. But it's the whole thing about taking a chunk of the matzah and hiding it for the kiddos to find
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And because with the food, it obviously Exodus just mentions the three, but as it's gone on, other things have been added. So I do not know what the words are, but the paste that has the fruit, the nut, the sometimes the wine and the cinnamon is to represent the mortar of the bricks, but I don't know what.
that is haroset.
I was going
Um,
to say churrat, but
but yeah, it's a represent. So basically everybody has their own personal recipe.
yeah,
When I make it, I don't use wine just because it's not gonna it's going to be in my refrigerator for days, and wine gets kind of gross after about a day and a half. Um, so I've never made it with wine. I've always used whatever mix of nuts and fruits and spices that kind of like, what do I like today? So that's just kind of how I make it.
yeah,
And so we use that in there. So we put it on top of the matzah. We will also put it with bitter herbs. So usually horseradish,
yeah.
just
Friday
because.
had some of that at the Seder, and it's very bitter. It was not my favorite. There's a video
Yeah,
on my last week's
it
podcast of me tasting it, and
yeah it's referred to as a halal sandwich, is where basically
yeah,
you put some haroset along with that, is to kind of like talk out of the bitterness or sweetness, was where that is. um but like I will eat like lots, like when I make my haroset, I will eat it again for like a week. I'm like slathering it on top of my matzah.
yeah.
um
That's where like where we can relate it to ourselves. So we have so like you said, you have the bitterness and you have the sweet, but that's life. And God leads us through the bitterness, and we can see that through the stories within the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, but also, backing up a little bit, we see this with Joseph. It obviously was very bitter to be sold into slavery, but then to be able to save his people and bring them into Egypt was sweet. But then it went bitter again when they were enslaved, but then sweetness when they are brought out into the wilderness out of bondage. And our lives are, whilst don't seem hard like that, we do go through those bittersweet cycles in life. And I think for us, we've got hindsight of their record. So thank goodness they were a record keeping people. But to learn from them, to, roll with the punches or to draw closer to God as we go through those bitter times is probably the greatest thing that we can learn from these stories.
yeah.
Yeah. So when they come out of, so after Passover, they come out of Egypt, and we have what I would refer to as probably the greatest miracle that we've ever heard, the parting of the Red Sea. And I just wanted to read just a bit of commentary from Robert Alter's book, because God gave them very specific instructions on where to go. So, like you said, I don't have a map, but the Red Sea's got like a little tiny bit up the top, and then it's got like a wider bit down the bottom. So, were you referring to the tongue, the Sea of Reeds? Is that the bit down the bottom?
The Well, what you've got is you've got the Sinai Peninsula,
Yep.
and so that's this upside down triangle, and then you've got the western tongue, which the northern part is where the Suez Canal connects, is up right there.
Yep.
And on the eastern tongue, it's you've got Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and a little bit of Jordan kind of looks up there, and you see the Sinai Peninsula, and you've got the southern tip of Israel, and that's where Eilat is.
Yep.
Um,
And
Absolutely
so
beautiful.
you would have
Scuba diving in Eilat is amazing. I will just say that. Um,
so you would have thought that they would have gone up the top where it's
right.
narrower and there's land, but they're given specific instructions. And so the commentary from Robert Alter is from Exodus verse 14. Um, so Exodus chapter 14 and verse 2. And he says, they are confounded in the land, the wilderness has closed round them. And that's from the Hebrew Bible. So he says, since God had given the most precise instructions as to where the Israelites should establish their camp, this quotation of what Pharaoh says when he heard the Israelites' movement is a strong indication that God has set up what amounts in military terms to an ambush. Pharaoh, seeing that the Hebrews had not followed the short and obvious coastal route to get out of Egypt northward, concludes that they must have lost their way. They are confounded in the land and have overtly allowed themselves to be pinned down on the shore of the Sea of Reeds. The wilderness has closed round them, where the pursuing troops will easily surround them and capture the whole mass of runaway slaves. So essentially, Pharaoh and his chariots and army come down, and they're essentially pinned between, almost surrounded by Pharaoh and his army and the Red Sea. And it would seem that there's no escape for them.
Right.
And then what the Egyptian leader can scarcely foresee is that the Hebrews will be able to flee into the sea, which then will turn into a death trap for the pursuing Egyptian troops. So that's part of Robert Alter's commentary. But the reason why I really liked that was because I think I'm quite a visual person. It opens up visually to me that entrapment. And then obviously God provides a way. So your study of the parting of the Red Sea, can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's again, this is where some people are saying the Sea of Reeds, which is actually on the western side of the Sinai,
Yep.
is up there. And so where other people have said, well, if it's actually happened and if it was a major thing, it was on the eastern side.
Okay.
Uh, because it doesn't make sense. The only reason why they say Mount Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula, that was Constantine's mom
Yep.
who said that. Which doesn't make sense because it's saying Moshe, he was herding sheep when he went on the mountain and blah blah blah, and it's like, well, that doesn't make sense if
Okay.
it's there. Why would he be herding sheep from Midian, which is Saudi Arabia, over there?
Yep.
You wouldn't. So a lot of people will say that it's happening in basically what's Western Saudi Arabia is where some people say Sinai is, and that's because that's where Midian is. And so how would you get there, and why would you enter Canaan from the east if you've been hanging out in the Sinai Peninsula because there's several major highways. There's one that follows the southern tip of the Sinai, and there's some that follow the northern edge of the Sinai
Yep.
near the Mediterranean. So why would why would Pharaoh worry about? He'd just be like, hey, if they're on the road, we can just chase them.
Yes.
Um, so that's where there is actually a land bridge underneath, under the water. Um, that and someone did an actual study in a wind tank. And they said, well, if you had enough wind, it would that you could actually it would not be dry land. It would be water up to your knees. But um, and that would make more sense as to why were they on the eastern side, and there's a lot more room over on the eastern side for thousands of people to be hanging over in
Yeah. Because
Saudi Arabia and Yemen
there was like
and everything.
660,000 of them.
Right. Well, people have been debating the numbers forever,
Yeah.
but yes, there were still thousands of people. So we would have seen that in the Sinai, and we
Yeah.
don't. But we have seen stuff of that whole area, where Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Qatar. There's evidence of people going way back, many, many thousands of years. So that would make, and plus that's where Midian is, and that's where Moshe lived for years.
Yeah. So then, when Moses puts his staff in the water and the Red Sea parts and they cross over, how do you guys, how does the Jewish community celebrate that? And what are your, how is that learning how God delivered them? How has that brought you to a greater understanding of what God can do for you in your life?
Yeah, again, it's one of our prayers that we sing every week is Michamocha, and that is the Song of Miriam.
Yeah, which is
And so,
15.
yeah, it is Exodus 15.
Yeah.
So, again, and although also the Michamocha prayer that we sing, also includes a little bit out of Jeremiah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
basically it's Exodus. Um, so that's how so every week we do that, and then when we hit that chunk of the Torah, the Devar is always talking about that. Um, so it is talking about God delivering us, but it's also that same passage is talking about all the all the Jewish people were like, yes, all the Egyptians and Mizraim have died, and God's saying, and everyone's like, no, don't celebrate that because those are still God's creatures that just died.
Yeah. And I love that you've just said that, because that shows your heart to allow all people to be recognized as important to God. And I feel like anti-Semitism is like ripe. For decades, generations, centuries, you guys have been persecuted for things in one way or another. And obviously in our generation, it's the Holocaust. Which is actually how I got into learning about the Seder's, because I had a patient who was elderly, and they were Jewish, and his wife was a survivor of the Holocaust. And we had great discussions at the bedside. She actually invited me to her house to attend their family Seder, and I said to her, I so want to come, but professionally, I'm not allowed to accept that invitation. But it actually set me on the path, because growing up, I've read Exodus, I've studied in Sunday school, but it wasn't something that I took notice of. But as I've learnt about it, I just love that you recognise everybody as important to God, regardless of their beliefs or how they live their life. So I love that you've got that humble heart for everybody as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, we've got we Jewish people. We've got our lunatics too. Who we have them too. So
Well,
um,
everybody does.
yeah.
I don't know if you heard, but last year in Australia at Bondi, there
Yeah.
Hanukkah celebration, and a man and his son did a mass shooting, and a lot of people died, and it was a really sad day. Um, a mass shooting of anybody is a really sad day, but
Yeah.
especially because they have differing beliefs. And I like to think that I'm very respectful of everybody and their beliefs. Um, I always say my friends at work, one's Baptist, one's Hindu, and one's Buddhist, and the four of us, we get along like a house on fire.
Right.
But
Well, and the greatest and the big hero of the Bondi Beach massacre was a Muslim dude.
and I was just about to say that was that actually that humbled me, was that man was the true hero, because without care for religion, race, gender, sexual orientation, anything, and said, I cannot let this happen, and put his own life at risk, and would have saved more people because more people would have died. And so I think it's really important that we recognize that everybody is important to God, but that, you know, things are done that aren't right. And we are the ones who need to show our beliefs and our love for God through the way that we behave and the way that we act.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So just in our last 5 minutes, sorry, we're both really talkers. I just want to talk to you forever. um, have you got anything that you want to share about the plagues of Passover, the escaping bondage from Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, that you would want us as a community of people studying this to know?
It's yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just as dealing with I grew up around a lot of people who are followers of that LDS.
Yeah,
Um, so I grew up in Arizona. There's a temple not that far from me.
yeah,
Um, so I had a I had an LDS roommate in college as well. So um, it's just kind of like we're all trying to get closer to the divine, however people want to choose to define that. Um, and so we all are doing the same. We're all like aiming for the same thing.
yeah,
And so for me, um, I'm not going to go and say, "Oh, well, you don't believe what I do, so therefore you're wrong." I'm like, well, you know, I do the best I can, and if I've got something that people like, they'll ask me about it.
yeah,
I'm not going to browbeat you and say, "Well, I don't agree with you, so you're wrong."
yeah,
It's the same thing here. There's a lot of debate within all of this, and so really, it is God. God did give us miracles, um, and so and God did this, and this is when we became a true people.
yeah,
Um, so before that, we went into Egypt as basically a big family, and now we're this big we're this big nation, and now we go over and then we go into Canaan.
yeah,
Um, so so for me, it's like that is all about how do we, you know, how do we connect to God?
yeah,
So all of this, doing, reading Torah, reading the Haftarah, all the other writings and things like that. That's all. How do I get closer to God?
yeah. And I love that you um, acknowledge that that's really what we're all doing. So, like I said, like I have different demographics of friends at work, and my daughter's partner, his mum is a practicing Muslim, and so to recognize our differences but sharing our similarities and just be respectful is just a I can feel that in your heart, and I just really want to say that I love that and I appreciate that you have had learnt that from your journey of growing closer to God, because that makes the world a better place.
Yep.
So just in closing, I just wanted to say a big thank you, especially because I've never met you before, but I think we're actually going to become great friends now because I think I've got
Yep.
a lot of questions.
Yeah, like you've got my contact information.
Oh,
But yeah,
so hopefully
but,
I can get
but
you on the podcast again. Thank you so
all
much.
right,
Liz. I
all
really
right. Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.